Hello folks out there in YouTube land, Chris Rich here. Welcome back, I'm glad you joined us. One of the reasons I'm putting these videos together is I hope to inspire you to have an amazing life. I hope to inspire you to do what sets your soul on fire. And I want to share some of those adventures and experiences that I've had that set my soul on fire. One of them is spending time with my dad. My dad's always been my hero in life. It started when I was 3 years old. I'll never forget it as long as I live. We were on a father-son outing. My older brother, my dad. I don't remember much about the camp out, much about the outing, but I do remember we went down to the East Verde and we were gonna go fishing. We had fishing poles, we had a tackle box, we got down to the creek. Dad was getting everything set up. He opened up the tackle box, got a few items out. One of those items was a jar of salmon eggs. I remember it sitting down there. Somehow, that jar of salmon eggs ended up in the creek, and it was my fault. I remember this feeling of devastation coming over me. Devastation that we weren't going to get to fish, and it was my fault that we weren't going to get to fish. Next thing I know, my dad is rolling up his sleeves, rolls it all the way up to the top of his arm, up around his shoulder. He lays down on the edge of that creek. He reaches down there in that creek. I was telling myself, it's over. There's no way this is going to work. It's too deep. Nobody can get those. I couldn't even see him how deep it was. Dad's fumbling around. Next thing I know, he comes up with that jar of salmon eggs. Bam, just like that. Dad became Superman to me. He became my hero in that moment. And we've had an amazing 50 years of spending time together. A lot of that time on the water chasing fish. He's been an amazing man, been married nearly 55 years to my mom. He's got 4 wonderful children, 17 grandchildren. He's devoted his life to his children and his grandchildren. He's been an amazing example of what it is to be a father, to be a dad, to be a good human being. He's a legend. He's a legend in my mind. He's a legend in his own time. A few years ago, we had the amazing experience of building a wooden fishing boat together. And I want to share that experience with you. It was a 10-month project. And during that time, I got connected and got to know my dad in a way that I'd never known him before. I didn't expect that to happen. I really expected, hey, let's build a boat. Let's have a project that we're working on. Then we'll get to go fishing in it. What I didn't realize is how connected and how much I was going to learn about my dad in that process. So Dad, thank you for being an amazing dad. Thank you for being an amazing human being. Thank you for devoting your life to your family. Come along, folks. I want to share a few photos of my dad, and I want to take you on this journey of building our wood.
Here's a few pictures of the legend. This has got to be over 50 years old, Mom and Dad in their early days. Here's the big legend with his firstborn son. There's a proud papa right there. Here we are with my older brother and me laying in my mom's arms. 2 girls were to come along after that. Here's 3 generations of riches. My dad, my grandpa, and my little sister. Our favorite pastime, chasing rainbow trout together. Even get my daughter into the action from time to time. She enjoys coming out and chasing those rainbows with us. Big Poppy's caught a lot of fish over his lifetime. There's a big fat one from Silver Creek up in Arizona. Got my brother into the action a few years ago up at the San Juan River. Had a great time together. Here's my brother's oldest daughter, Marissa. She enjoys coming out and fishing with us. And the Big Poppy just keeps on catching them time after time again. Here's the boat project. First part of the project, get our workspace right. Build a workbench. Use sawhorses and plywood. Workbench had to be about 16 feet long. The boat was going to be about 15 feet long. Then we had to scarf 2 pieces of marine grade plywood together. Marine grade plywood comes in 8-foot pieces. Had to scarf it together. This is what that scarf joint looks like from the inside. It's going to be in the middle on the bottom of the boat. From there, we cut out the shape of the bottom of the boat. That cuts at a 45-degree angle because ultimately we're going to stitch the side of the boat to the bottom of the boat. All the wood is treated. It's all sealed up with epoxy and or fiberglass. You can see the fiberglass laying off the edge there. We haven't trimmed it off at the bottom of the boat or the front and back of the boat. Then we had to do the same thing with the sides. Here they are treated with epoxy, fiberglass together, sealed up. Time to get ready to start that stitching project. Make sure everything is smooth around that cut.
and then begin the stitching process. When we started the stitching process, started out real quick, looked like it was going to go real quick, might be done in an hour, maybe 2 hours at the most. Well, 8 hours later, we were still fighting that final piece to try and get it to fit together. Most of the stitching took place with zip ties. That's right, we stitched it together with zip ties. But it took quite a bit to get that other end all the way together and get it together, come together tight. Cut out some 2x4s to spec, attached them to the top of the boat there, so we were making sure we were shaping it out correctly. And we ended up using some doubled over baling wire in some of the places so we could pull that wood together in the hard to get together places. You can see the stitches here from the inside. Once the stitching was done, we mixed up some epoxy with wood flour to make a putty. We troweled it in between the stitches. We let it set up overnight. Come back the next morning, we cut those stitches out. We had our fingers crossed when we did that, hoping that wood would stay together. It stayed together just fine. From there, we mixed up more epoxy with the wood flour to make a putty. We troweled that in all the way around that inside seam, because ultimately we were going to come back and fill that in and seal it up with fiberglass tape and epoxy all the way around the inside. Once you put that fiberglass tape and epoxy and it sets up, you got a real rough edge, you got some sharp places sticking up, quite a bit of sanding, quite a bit of effort to smooth that out, feather it out. Don't want to take too much off, but you want to smooth it off and get rid of those high spots, make it look real nice. Then it's time to flip the boat over, seal up the outside seam. Had to fill in some of the low spots with epoxy putty. There's a corner, you can see what that looked like. We filled that in all the way around, smoothed it out, came back with the fiberglass tape and sealed up the outside. Once again, you've got some rough edges, you got some sharp spots in it, quite a bit of sanding to get that all smoothed out. You can see what the bottom looks like, covered in epoxy dust and fiberglass dust. Once we got that all smoothed out, there's the big poppy with the power sander, smoothing out part of that bottom edge. Put another coat of epoxy on the bottom just to clean it up, make it look sharp. Flip the boat back over. Now it's time to start laying out the inside shelving project in the boat. We started off with string and tape, making sure we had it measured out right, making sure it was level, it was in the right spot. Once we got that right, we started to build the hardwood frame for the shelf. We had to build it inside the boat, make sure everything was right, make sure it was going to attach just right. Then we take it out. We've got to seal up all the wood with epoxy. Then we've got to attach it to itself outside the boat. Then we take it back in and we attach it to the hull of the boat. Once we've got that done, it's time to start working on the shelves themselves. Here they are, they're getting fiberglassed and epoxied, getting ready to put in the boat. Put them in the boat here, hadn't trimmed all the fiberglass off, but man, we're starting to get excited right here. It's looking like a project. Trimmed off the fiberglass. Man, this boat's looking good. We can see it starting to come together for us, folks. We attach those shelves to the frame. They're attached up underneath with epoxy putty, and then we had to come back in on that top seam and trowel that in with epoxy putty, seal it up real good. Seam turned out real nice, looked real smooth and looked real clean. We were proud of ourselves. Now it's time to start building the pedestal seats. Dad built a jig. We took 1/8-inch pieces of plywood. We smeared epoxy putty between them. We wrapped that plywood around that jig, clamped it together, let it sit up for a week or two, came back, unclamped it, and here we've got the main part of our seat pedestal. Then we've got to measure that out. We've got to level them off. Ultimately, they're going to be watertight storage, and we're also going to be the seat pedestal. So we're going to put, swivel seats on top of these pedestals. So from here, we've got to figure out how to get them level inside the boat. Went through that process. Man, they're starting to get exciting. We can see this thing taking shape. Getting the other pedestal set in on the other side, getting it leveled off. There's a proud papa. This is starting to look like a boat. We're getting excited about it. Before we sealed it up, we thought we'd paint the inside of the pedestal. It's going to be hard to reach inside there. Now we've got the seats seat pedestals attached with epoxy putty and fiberglass tape. Went ahead and started to paint some of the boat that we thought was going to be hard to reach and thought we weren't going to touch again. And so the bottom of the boat ultimately on the inside was going to be painted this light gray color. From there we started to build the center console. Again, we had to seal up all the wood real good with epoxy. Had a big knot in the top of that. Thought we'd put a fly in there and fill it in with epoxy, kind of an artistic touch. Built a jig to attach and make sure we had a nice square frame to build that center console. Once we had that put together, we attached it with epoxy putty, clamped it on. There we've got our center console. That's where we're going to sit and row the boat, put our storage, our fly box underneath that. One of the things that happens in Arizona when you build a drift boat is it's impossible to go buy a trailer. You have to have it built. We brought the trailer up when it was about 80-90% done, put the boat on it, took some measurements. Hey, we need this a little different. We need that a little different. Move this over to here. And then we go back to the boat project. We're creating some storage underneath the shelves, and we're starting to look like a boat, folks. Here we've got the oar locks being attached to the hull. The next part of the project is we've got to bring the gunnels in, and we've got to attach those gunnels. So the gunnels are going to be screwed in. They're also going to be epoxy puttied in. We started with the outside gunnels first. Took a lot of clamps, took a lot of work to get that to come around. But there you can see we've got the gunnels in. They're attached. They've been epoxied. They've been screwed in. It's the only screws in the boat. There's the joint before we filled it in and sealed it all up. But you can see it's starting to come together. We can smell the finish line at this point in time, folks. We're just doing finishing touches, sealing up all the little loose ends, starting to put some varnish on the wood parts that aren't going to be touched again, getting ready to paint the bottom of the inside of the boat. Yes, sir, we can smell the finish line. Here it is. You can see there's got some more varnish on it. The outside has yet to be varnished, and we've yet to put the seats on, but that's just going to take a matter of a few minutes to get that done. Each of these little phases, you can see there now, the wood's got some varnish on it. It's really starting to take a nice rich look. And we've got the inside painted, put several coats of paint on. Got a little bit of maintenance we do on it. Had to finish off the trailer, attach the wood to it, put some carpet on it. This is where the boat's gonna ride as we go along. Here's the first day we got that boat out of the garage. Got the big poppy in the boat, took a little drive around the circle, get a feel for what it's going to look like. Pretty exciting day right there, folks. It was 10 months in the making. Lots of effort, lots of time, lots of conversation. First day out on the water, we were crossing our fingers, hoping that boat was going to float level, hoping it wasn't going to float in a twisted way. It's worked good. There's the big poppy christening the boat. He's hooked up at Becker Lake. Got a nice trout on it. Here he is working the fly rod on another trout that he's hooked up on there at Becker Lake. We've had a lot of fun on this boat in the last 2-3 years. Boat should last us for several generations. There's the big poppy with a nice rainbow from Becker Lake. Anyhow, I appreciate you coming on the journey with us, and I hope it's inspired you to take action, take on a project, connect with people in your life. This is what it's all about, folks. Being out in beautiful places, connecting with people in your life. Oh, one more picture of the big poppy with the beautiful tiger trout from Becker Lake. Yeah, these are just a few of the days we've spent on the lake. It's brought us a lot of joy and a lot of adventure. I see it coming for many years to come. The best part of this project for me was the connection I was able to have with my dad. A story that I'll have forever, as long as we live. Yes, sir. There's the legend. There he is holding the boat there at Becker Lake. Pretty scene. Once again, thanks for joining us, folks. Hope you found something for yourself in this story. Come back again.